Okay, so sorry, first of all, if you can hear like car noises in the background and everything. There's bleach on the floor, so the smell needs to go out. Um, that said, this recording is just to discuss two of the issues going on within the great nation of Nigeria right now. The second one isn't like a big issue yet in terms of like legality and all of that, but I'll get to it eventually anyway. But the first one is regarding a protest that is at this point either ongoing or already done. I think they are supposed to pass the votes today, the final passing or review of vote on the, I think, bill or possible act today. And basically, the act is saying that elections in the country would effectively continue business as usual. I haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty of the details, and that's embarrassing to admit, but I did gather one thing that's crucial, and part of what they've been saying, that is the day referring to the lawmakers, is that if there is no data to transmit the results on the day of the election, that they will be transmitted manually. Now, a lot of people naturally took offense to that claim. Oh, the noise today. So a lot of people took offense to that claim, myself included. And that is because of the drama, to put it lightly, that happened with the elections that happened in 2023. A lot of what happened in 2023 was in the polling unit, they tried to upload the results directly, but there was, there's no data here, there's no connectivity. Because truly, there are many places in Nigeria where you're not going to see a single bar of service. So that is true. That isn't fake news, okay? However, in those places, right, that the officials uploaded the results or couldn't upload the results, when they would eventually check on the uploaded results platform, they would see things like maybe they voted 300 for party A and 4 for party B. They were seeing something like 3 with the 00 visibly cancelled, then 400 for party B. In other words, 100 people migrated to the town or overnight or something like that. So there were stark discrepancies between what was counted locally and what was seen on the results upload platform. And that has deepened the sense of distrust that people have in the electoral system. Now, normally, there's always been a potent level of distrust in the electoral system, but 2023, especially with that election being the first one with a sizable population of Gen Z voters, it really felt like a big blow in the face, because people were more active on social media than they ever were. There were, at least this time, candidates with beyond average campaigns, so everybody felt like things could go in the positive direction for once, all right? For once, people felt like there could be a chance of having this true sense of a free and fair election. Now, just some background on how Nigerian politics works. So everything is right wing, okay? We don't have like a centrist Democrat Party or a right wing Republican, but everything is right wing. Nigeria is a right wing country, right wing population, everybody is right wing. And if you're left wing, you're just isolated. So, that said, what are politicians vie for basically, or what they campaign on is basically their persona and their manifestos. I will do this. I am a good guy. I promise this. I am a good guy. So we had three solid candidates in 2023, and the three stood out to different factions of the population for different reasons. But a lot of people suspect that despite some candidates having clear edges over the other in certain regards, in certain aspects overall, some people, I would say almost correctly, in fact correctly actually, believe that people still voted based on identity politics. So of the three, well, there were actually four anyway, but three who took the bulk of the votes. So the three who took the bulk of the votes coincidentally represented the three biggest, I won't say they are the biggest, but the three standout tribes within Nigeria. So one was Hausa. The president who would eventually win is Yoruba. And then the third candidate was Igbo. And a lot of people, levied accusations against people. Let's say, for example, Yoruba people voting for who's now the president because he's Yoruba. Hausa people voting for the candidate that was Hausa, and then the Igbo people were voting for the Igbo candidate. Then South tribes, other North tribes, voting for whoever they felt necessary out of peer pressure in one way or the other. These claims, right? I have no reason to doubt that yes, there are people who voted because of this. But the thing is, you can't even make that allegation clearly, because even in states dominated by certain tribes, the tribesman being represented in the federal election didn't win in those states. So that's one. Then we also have or had allegations of animosity voting, so voting against. A lot of people were accused of voting against a tribe. So let's say some people were believed to have biases against a tribe, so they just voted just to spite the other tribe. And then there was also a religious factor too, because Nigeria is like a slight majority Muslim country. So the people that would eventually win, the party that would eventually win, had a Muslim president and a Muslim vice, but the other two parties in contention had, like the Hausa guy was a Muslim, I believe, then his vice was a Christian, then the Igbo guy was a Christian, I guess, then his vice, I guess, was a Muslim. But the party that would eventually win, APC, was a Muslim ticket, and a lot of people believe that really got them votes around the country, because beyond the rigging, or the supposed rigging, the alleged rigging, and by the alleged rigging, I'm referring to the discrepancies between what the people saw in their polling units and then what they saw on the collation system. So beyond that, beyond those discrepancies, they still, from what I can estimate, won. And the main reason why people feel like they won beyond tribal politics, beyond propaganda, is the fact that it was a Muslim ticket. So all this said, right, it birthed a very potent movement immediately following the election, and then the current president being declared the winner. It birthed a potent movement and court case contesting the elections from the parties that did not win. And, after all the investigations, everything came out, and then the current president was still certified the current president. So people just chalked it up, a lot of people rather, that were disappointed with the results, chalked it up to being the fact that they ran on a Muslim ticket and were able to pander to Muslim majority cities, which have the bulk of the population in the country. So these discrepancies are what we're trying to avoid as against next year. That all these matters of, we voted 400 for one party, but on the coalition platform we're saying 200 for said party, that it shouldn't be the case, that everything should be direct online in real time. Real-time transmission is what is being protested for, and they're still there in Abuja. Abuja is the nation's capital, and that's where the House of Assembly is. So there is still being protested and contested, but the thing is, a lot of people have also given up on any hope they might have that it might reflect the desire for real-time transmission of results. So that's just the dilemma. Regarding my opinions on this, obviously the real-time I feel is better. I don't know of any shortcomings it might have. I can't think of any shortcomings a real-time transmission system might have, because the manual, as we saw, numbers were being cancelled, all right? And even if we want to say, they cancelled them on the spot, it ought not to be. We need to have a cleaner, and more optimized process to reflect votes, for crying out loud, and not have people just write things and then have them collated, probably even erroneously, on the system, because the results are handwritten, they now have to be typed. So it's possible someone missed a zero here, added a zero there, things like that. So that's just one issue. It's just one of the tragedies going on right now. I'm just hoping for the best, that not only is the real-time solution being championed at the moment now, not only that is it enacted, but that it's actually enforced, and that everything, at least let it be that the result reflects what truly is going on within us. Now, as I've said, beyond the blatant discrepancies, I still believe that the party that won would have still won. Based off of anecdotes, based off of just calculated guesses as to how people could vote. Pandering is a very big thing. All right, I know more people than I ought to that at the time were really, how would I put it? They were really compelled to vote for the current president because of the Muslim ticket thing, because they are also Muslim. And I don't know if this is an idea that they get from their mosques or their imams or whatnot, but I could have at the time pointed to 5 people who, publicly disclosed their intention to vote for the current president because explicitly because of the Muslim ticket, and that they felt that Nigeria would have been saved by Muslim ticket, forgetting that our previous president, who is now late, was also a Muslim, and that the administration before his, right, okay, the administration before that administration was also a Muslim. So where is the saving? What saving needs to be done? It bears a lot of questioning among over the thought process, but this might be a small subset. Beyond those people, there are a lot of people who had, plausible reasons to vote for the current president. The current president had been a governor, and a lot of people used that. I think they've all been governors, the three major people that ran. So he stood out in that regard in terms of his repertoire to a lot of people. So that's why he pulled votes outside the religious pandering ecosystem. But the major pushback against him is the party he ran under is the party that had been in office for 8 years before him. So a lot of people are like, if anything, we ought to give a new party the chance to rule, and let's at least see what happens. As I've said, Nigeria isn't the kind of country where our politicians run on, we're pro-abortion, we're not pro-abortion. No, everything, the ideologies, everyone is anti-abortion, anti-feminism, anti-gay rights, anti every possible left-wing ideal, explicitly, okay? So that's not what they're running on. They're running on sweet talk, as far as I'm concerned. All of them are running on sweet talk, as far as I'm concerned. There is nothing tangible to really hold a candidate accountable for should they eventually win. So we're just basically shuffling between party names when it comes to the voting polls. And the thing, even with the party names, the candidates aren't always uniquely committed to one party. So even now, right, the Igbo guy that ran, has now deflected to another party. The Hausa guy, I believe, has also changed to another party. Of course, the president is still within his party. So now we're now looking at voting for a completely new party that hasn't even had major foothold in the recent election. So that's the thing. We're just in the country, just voting based on what could effectively be described as vibes. We like the vibe of this person. We're not voting based on, party ideals that, okay, even if the president messes up, he has a party of like-minded individuals that call him out. Like, take, for example, on the Republican side, there are, of course, Trump, I believe, has represented conservative ideals a bit, even too much. But should Trump steer towards liberalism, there are conservatives to pull him more back to the conservative side. Should a Democrat steer towards conservatism or even leftism, there are Democrats to pull them back to centrism. So, yeah, that's just the thing. So at least the issue now is, at the very least, even if we're going to get a shitty president, a shitty cabinet of people, at least let it be that the votes counted properly and the system was optimized and everything. So that's just my 4.5 cents on that issue. Now the second issue is, I don't know, kind of touchy. I will try my best to use the proper sanitized language, but I may slip up once in a while. And should I slip up, I hope I have the strength to cut those parts out where I eventually mention words that I'm not meant to mention on this platform. So it is talking about abuse of the sexual nature. I don't think I've said anything controversial. There have been many stories over the years since I was born, since before I was born, pre-internet, post-internet, pre-social media, post-social media. There have been issues of the sort, and they come up tragically every other day. And by tragically, and I want to really emphasize that I mean tragically. So, in the social media era, what has been the trend has been doubt. Okay, so in the Me Too era, right, the Believe Women narrative really took flight, and then it became more like semi-standard practice to err on the side of the accuser until proven guilty. So that's why in Western society that I can recall, cases like Amber Heard were particularly shocking, because that's one of the first times that women of such high-profile status were proven to not be reflecting the whole story of the claims they were making against the potential abuser. Now, that's just using Amber Heard as an example. I'm not necessarily saying that she lied, she didn't lie. I don't know. The truth is, in all these cases, no one ever really knows. I don't know if I can recommend a show, but watch Unbelievable, right? And just the first episode alone, we should really put into perspective how the waters for SA cases can get muddied very quickly. So when it comes to SA allegations, I really don't like to say, oh, X is lying or X is telling the truth either. The truth is, right, the actual truth is, when it comes to SA, is no one will ever know beyond the parties involved in the case. That said, let's talk about this issue that's been making the rounds on Nigerian social media platforms. There's a lady, I don't know if I can say her name, but there's a lady who took to social media to make claims that she was abused in this manner. However, why this story has really taken the airwaves more than it would in previous times is there are a lot of reactionary comments, videos, tweets saying, or rather pointing out discrepancies in her statement, saying that things she's claiming couldn't have happened and all of that, basically casting heavy doubt. But this time what seems different is they're using her own story against her and all of that. So naturally, tragically, or at least from what I've observed in the Nigerian internet spaces, there's a saddening culture that leans potently more towards casting doubt over the claim. Prior to this case, a lot of other cases, they allege things against common people or against celebrities. A lot of the cases have You look through the comments that people make, and it's usually things like, if this is true, if this is true, if this is true. Now, if this is true is even one of the more sane comments you would see. You would see things like, women wake up and lie. Yep, a lot. And these comments would get thousands of likes, thousands of shares, and all of that. You would see comments like, to be a man isn't easy. You would even see instances where the man is, and I'm talking about heterosexual rape, where where the man is the aggressor. So you would even see instances where the man was proven to be in the wrong, and they would still come out and say, what was she, those kinds of what was she wearing kind of comments. So the discussion being had here is really that there's a SA apologist culture. And to me, that speaks that speaks to the larger problem of the guiding ideology behind the workings of the mind of many people who happen to be Nigerian citizens living in Nigeria. As I said, Nigeria is like at the very least 99% right-wing ideology people, and I'm talking far right, push as right can go, far right ideology, right? 99% of the population. And from my observations, haven't been down the alt-right rabbit hole propagated by people in the Americas. I have seen that this type of dismissive ideology tends to also stem from people who subscribe to right-wing ideas for some reason. Now, there's a guy that I follow on Instagram. I don't know if he's a good person or if he's someone I ought to refer to, but honestly, I'll just say his name. His name is Keegan Titom, and he's one of the many people I've seen talking about how to identify the psychology behind politics and why people vote a certain way and why people align a certain way. So, yes, somehow, it reflects that in a country dominated by right-wing ideas, or dominated by people with right-wing ideas, that we have a potent culture of casting doubt over allegations of this nature. And all they said, I wonder if there is a physical or fundamental difference in how brains work that will make people with different brains, different stories, different families think alike on different issues within the same thought patterns. So you could pick two random people in Nigerian society and you ask them political questions like, okay, what do you think? What do you think should be done to people who make false allegations? Or what do you think of allegations? They would respond the same way. They don't know themselves, but they will respond the same way. Ask them, same thing with feminism, same thing with other hot button political issues. Ask them the same thing, and it's possible they will give you near identical results. So they're really going in on this girl right now. Now, although this one stands out because even the reasonable doubt people or the more restrained people are coming out to say, this doesn't tally and this isn't a believe all women situation and all of that. That to me, the bigger point is the lack of restraint in allowing the legal process to be the legal process, or the lack of maturity, I assume, to say that I do not know what is going on. The humility actually to say I don't know what is going on. All I know is that this person is making allegations that I cannot prove. If I cannot prove them, but I believe them, then all I can do is show support. But when I do not now believe, and I now look through their story and now have my own doubts, of what purpose does me expressing my doubts in public forums serve, other than, possibly muddying the waters of a potential case? When in doubt, in my opinion, I feel it's best to just keep quiet. I don't think she named the abuser, but should she name the abuser? Even this when in doubt thing goes both ways. So when in doubt, you don't know anything about the abuser, don't go calling the abuser or the alleged abuser names based off of things you really have no idea about if they're true or not. And that is just the tragedy or rather the tragedy with cases of the sort, because we can't ever really say we know for sure that X happened or Y didn't happen. We just have to let the parties involved, do their thing. And, people now say, oh, but what about the people who lose their reputation because of false allegations? That now is a we problem, and by we I mean society problem, because we are the ones that get to decide if people ought to lose their lives over allegations and not convictions. So that's just really the thing. Like, there are guilty hands irrespective. You support one side, you're guilty. You support the other side, you're guilty. You stand back, you're guilty. But at least, for the mere fact that it could be true, right? Instead of casting doubts and potentially ruining a case, or influencing the court of public opinion against a case that hasn't even met the courts, I don't know if it's proper to publicly express doubts in very demeaning ways. All right, she's been called everything in the book. Liar just being the most friendly of them all. So my hope for this story is, that truth prevails. If there was abuse, the abuser ought to go through the process. If there wasn't abuse and this was some form of misunderstanding, then my hope is that the truth comes out, and the penalties and all of that need to be done for, will I say deceptive acts? I don't know what kind of action or what class of action this falls under, but whatever repercussions could be faced for such, My hope is that they will be faced should this be an untrue situation. And like I said, what's unbelievable is very easy to muddy the waters with cases like this, like cases where there isn't hard evidence, like, oh, a stab wound or something like that. Just really need to exercise restraint. But this thing, right, that inability to say you do not know speaks to a larger problem in Nigerian society and societies with predominantly conservative populations. Because part of the conservative ideology is, or a big part of the conservative ideology is rooted in religion or pseudo-religious practice. So religion is controversial because it often makes the claim that I know something about the afterlife, and that naturally wouldn't be controversial if there weren't many other systems saying that they know of the afterlife, but in very different ways. So that's what makes religion controversial. But the thing is, religion, right, even though many conservatives may not identify as religious people, but religion in itself is a conservative far-right idea. So their inability to say you do not know, right, is what, or rather, it stems from the same kind of thought pattern, this near instinctive thought pattern that people have that gives birth to these kinds of right-wing thoughts, these thoughts that have people losing sleep over phantom threats like a woman becoming president, or so all of this really, why the whole thing is just gaining so much traction against the person making the allegations is just people's inability to say they do not know. It's the same reason why religion is the controversial chokehold, or it holds the controversial chokehold on our society, because people have the inability to say they do not know. And not only do they know, but even when you present facts that directly say to them that, oh, the thing that they thought they knew, they actually didn't know, and it was this other thing, automatically you are an agent of the devil, which is another big controversial point that we're at in society, where you can't tell somebody anything and they'll see reason with you beyond you being the agent of the devil. So that's just where we're at now. I just highlighted that to say that this idea of casting doubts publicly over these kinds of allegations, be they evidently false or not, stems from the same place from the same mind that will tell you, oh yes, I may not have died, but I know all that I know that there is to be about the afterlife. Stems from the same type of mind that will tell you confidently that our national budget is being misappropriated in this specific way. Even if that's happening, you can't know the specific way unless you are involved. And then if you are involved, how come you didn't stop it while it was happening? So that's not a question for you. You understand? People make very confident allegations on the fly. And we have this repeated culture of passing down enemies, the government is always your enemy and all of that. But the thing is, if the government is your enemy, why specifically? Oh, they're wasting our taxes on what? How? You understand? So the thing is, a lot of the time, we don't know the how. even the stories that come, people don't hold those stories. People don't even point to those stories that come out that, oh, they found X billion naira in this person's house. They found X billion naira in this person's house. People don't even hold those stories. They'll just allege something from the sky, from the actual sky, and present it like facts. So that is the nation of people, from my anecdotes anyway, from my own anecdotal experience. It's possible that there are cities where people are more level-headed, but from my anecdotal experience, having lived a considerable amount of time in different regions in the country, from my anecdotal experience, that's just the kinds of people that we have in the majority making bold allegations. Then, there's also the issue of blatant hypocrisy and blatant fear over phantom threats, as I've said, and, the desire to meet superficial societal demands and all of that. All these things, they line up, and I am not using the best or the most coherent terms of definitions and all of that to really define the headspace. But basically with these two stories, or this second story rather, I really just want to point out that all these ideas, right, these ideas that cast doubts on allegations and cast doubts on, what the afterlife holds, all these ideas, they come from that same right-wing space and everything. So, yeah, just hope for the best for this case, really. And that if there is justice to be served, that it will be served. And that's just my 3 1/3 cents on this issue. Thank you for listening, I suppose.